A dog interrupted the funeral by barking at the coffin. When a man questioned why, the priest became nervous, leading the man to uncover a shocking secret. It was a cloudy day, and the sky seemed as sad as everyone present at the funeral of Margaret. People remained silent, some holding tissues to their eyes filled with tears, recalling the happy moments shared with her. The wind blew gently, making the leaves of the trees move as if nature itself was paying homage. Subscribe to the channel and click on the notification. Help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers, this way YouTube will deliver this content to more people who will benefit. I count on your help. Suddenly, a loud sound broke the silence. It was Max, Margaret's dog, who began barking relentlessly. He wasn't just any dog, he had always been Margaret's loyal companion. Now, in front of everyone, he barked, staring directly at the coffin. People exchanged surprised glances. What had Max seen? Some whispered. The dog seemed agitated, pacing back and forth but never taking his eyes off the coffin. His barking grew louder, as if trying to warn of something. Max was known for his loyalty and intelligence, everyone in town knew this. Some children felt a chill in their stomachs, recalling stories of dogs sensing things humans couldn't. Something was wrong, and Max was trying to say so. At that moment, some adults approached the dog, trying to calm him, but he continued barking and staring at the coffin. He was so determined that even those who didn't believe in superstitions began to doubt. Curiosity took hold of everyone, eager to understand what Max was trying to communicate. Father Michael, who stood at the front near the coffin, saw that all eyes were on him and the dog. Trying to remain calm, he breathed deeply and gestured for people to sit down again. Yet Max's barking didn't cease. With an awkward smile, the priest approached Max and, in a soft voice, tried to soothe him. "Come on, Max, everything is fine here," but Max continued barking as if alerting them to something terrible. The priest extended his hand to pat the dog's head, but Max backed away, growling softly, never taking his eyes off the coffin. Father Michael began to sweat, wiping his forehead as he noticed everyone in the church observing his every move. "It's just a dog," he said with a nervous laugh, attempting to refocus the congregation on the ceremony. But deep down, he too seemed uneasy. Some noticed that the priest avoided looking directly at the coffin, as if trying not to see what Max had. "Does he know something?" whispered a woman to her friend beside her. Others began to feel a strange chill, as if something invisible was present. Curious children clung to their parents, holding their hands tightly. Father Michael looked at the dog with an increasingly tense expression, seeing that no one was calming down. The priest said more firmly, "Please, someone take the dog outside." However, Max refused to leave. He remained there, barking and staring intently at the coffin, while the mystery seemed to deepen among the attendees. Among those at the funeral was a man no one knew well. His name was Jack. He was a stranger, someone who had arrived in town only recently but had curiously felt a special affection for Margaret despite not knowing her well. Jack had a keen and curious nature, always enjoying solving mysteries, and upon witnessing Max's strange behavior, he sensed something was very wrong. He looked at the dog and then at the coffin, realizing Max wasn't barking without reason. With this, he slowly adjusted his coat and walked over to where the dog was, as people watched with interest, trying to understand what this man they barely knew would do. "Hello there," Jack said gently, crouching beside Max. "What are you trying to show us?" Hearing Jack's calm voice, Max stopped barking for a moment, as if assessing the man. His eyes shone with a mix of intelligence and fear, as if pleading for help. Jack then began looking in the same direction as the dog, toward the coffin. Suddenly, he felt a chill run down his spine, as if something was urging him to uncover what was wrong. Some in the church began whispering, questioning what the man was doing. "Leave the dog alone," said one of the men, but Jack simply shook his head and replied, "I think Max is trying to tell us something. Perhaps we should listen." Without hesitation, Jack moved even closer to the dog and in a low tone said, "Show me what's bothering you, boy." Max wagged his tail slightly, as if understanding Jack wanted to help. He stopped barking for a moment and began sniffing the ground, taking small steps toward the coffin. People watched anxiously, as memories of stories about dogs sensing danger or supernatural events passed through their minds. Max's behavior left everyone tense. Jack suggested that the dog might be sensing something invisible to human eyes. The tension increased, and people began to wonder if Max was sensing something supernatural or if there was a more rational explanation for the mystery surrounding Margaret's death. Clearly uncomfortable, Father Michael began to realize the situation was slipping out of his control. He took a deep breath, adjusted his robe, and with a serious look walked to the center of the church, trying to regain control of the ceremony. Raising his hands to call for silence, Father Michael spoke, "Please, everyone calm down." His voice was firm but progressively trembled, as if he was nervous. "We are here to pay our last respects to Margaret, a person so dear to us all." He cast a piercing glance at Jack, who was still beside Max, trying to understand what the dog wanted to show. And not to entertain distractions, the priest continued, now with a tone more commanding. "Someone is here causing confusion at such a delicate moment." Some in the church nodded in agreement, but others looked at the priest with a mix of doubt and curiosity. Why was he so nervous? Why did he seem so eager to end this situation? Father Michael looked at Jack. "What you are doing is disrespectful to Margaret," his voice now louder and sharper, echoing through the church. "Leave the dog alone and stop distracting us with these foolishness." Jack, feeling the weight of the accusation, looked intently at the priest but did not back down. The exaggerated manner in which the priest tried to laugh off the situation made Jack even more suspicious. Beside him, Max began to growl softly, as if he too didn't like the priest's tone. The priest, realizing he was losing control, insisted, "Everyone, please, do not let her memory be tainted by this behavior. Let's return to our original purpose, to pray for her soul and her eternal peace." Although his words were meant to reassure, those observing closely noted the sweat on his forehead and the tremor in his hands, which told a different story. Silence fell over the place for a moment as everyone waited to see what Jack would do next. But before we continue, remember to leave your like and subscribe to the channel if you love animals and their touching stories. Jack, sensing the priest's discomfort and his attempt to end the situation as quickly as possible, decided to ask the question everyone was waiting for. "Father Michael, how exactly did Margaret die?" The murmur in the church grew. Some people exchanged surprised glances at Jack's boldness. Father Michael's eyes widened, clearly flustered. He had told everyone that Margaret had passed away peacefully in her sleep, but at that moment, Jack's question echoed through the church like a stone cast into a calm lake, causing ripples of uncertainty. "What do you mean, how did she die?" replied the priest, now more defensive. "I found her in her bed myself." "She passed away peacefully in her sleep," he repeated, almost as if trying to convince himself. Jack, undeterred, took a step forward and continued, "But why was Margaret alone, and why were you the first to find her? Doesn't that seem a bit strange? Maybe we should investigate a bit more." The murmur among the people increased, and a mix of curiosity and unease settled over the room. The children looked with wide eyes, trying to understand what was happening, while the adults whispered among themselves, creating an even more charged atmosphere. The priest, now with a reddened face and an expression of barely contained fury, stomped his foot on the ground, silencing everyone once more. "This is absurd," he exclaimed, almost shouting. "You are causing confusion in a sacred moment, disrespecting the memory of a beloved woman. I will not allow it." Without wasting time, he pointed a trembling finger at Jack. "Leave here immediately, you and that dog." The tone was authoritative, but there was a growing nervousness in his words. "We will not tolerate another word from you in this sacred place." Jack hesitated for a moment, but Max beside him let out a loud bark, as if responding to the expulsion. Jack knew he had touched on something important, something the priest didn't want anyone to discover. But for now, he had no choice. With a final defiant look, Jack slowly turned, took Max's leash, and began to walk away in silence. Father Michael began to walk towards the door as everyone in the church whispered in surprise at what had just happened. Jack left the church with Max by his side, feeling the weight of curious and suspicious gazes from the people. But he knew he couldn't simply leave things as they were. Something inside him told him this mystery needed to be solved, and Max seemed to agree, wagging his tail as if ready for the next adventure. "Let's go, buddy," Jack whispered. "I think we have a lot to uncover here." They headed to the cemetery, among the trees and old tombstones. The wind blew cold, making the leaves rustle and creating a sound that seemed like a whisper in the silence. Jack looked around, sensing the place had a mysterious air. Max walked restlessly, sniffing the ground as if he knew exactly where to search. Jack decided the first step would be to learn more about Margaret's life. They made their way to her house, a small stone building on the edge of the forest, with a garden that seemed neglected. Upon arrival, they found the door unlocked, as if someone had left in a hurry without bothering to close it. A shiver ran through Jack's body. The place was dusty, but it seemed someone had recently rummaged through things. With Max by his side, sniffing every corner, Jack began to explore the house. He searched drawers, rifled through papers on an old table, and found a small wooden box. Inside were letters and photos yellowed by time. He began to read the letters and soon discovered that Margaret harbored many secrets. The letters spoke of secret meetings and conversations Margaret had with people from outside the town. It was then that Jack found a letter that made his heart race. A note in Margaret's handwriting mentioned Father Michael, stating she had discovered very serious things about him. Jack looked at Max, who seemed restless, as if sensing they were close to something important to search the house. Jack found a small key taped to the back of one of the frames on the wall. He paused for a moment. Pondering, "What does this key unlock?" he murmured aloud. Max let out a short bark, as if encouraging Jack to keep searching. Next to the key was a photograph. In it, Margaret stood beside Father Michael, and in the background, the church could be seen. But what caught Jack's attention most was something in the lower corner of the image, a small metal box identical to the one Margaret mentioned in her letters about the priest, where she said he hid money. "We're on the right track, Max," Jack said with a mix of apprehension and determination, petting the dog. Jack murmured to himself, if Margaret was trying to say something about the priest, maybe this key is the answer we need. Feeling a wave of determination, with the key in hand and Max by his side, he knew the truth was closer than ever. Now he wanted to uncover what the priest was hiding. For this, he would search every corner of the town. What do you think Jack is doing right by investigating? What would you do in his place? Leave a comment with your opinion and stay tuned because this story will leave you speechless. With the small key in hand, Jack felt he was getting closer to unraveling the mystery. He and Max returned to the town center, where they could continue their search. The town seemed quiet, but Jack knew there was something very dark hidden there. He wanted to understand the secrets Margaret kept and what exactly she knew about Father Michael. Jack headed to the town library, an old place with shelves full of dusty books and old documents. He began to search for anything that could link Margaret and Father Michael to something in common. After some time flipping through pages, he found an album of old photos of the town. As he looked through the pages, he saw photos of community events, religious festivals, and finally, he found a series of photos of Margaret. One of these photos immediately caught his attention. It was an image of Margaret with Father Michael, but the strangest thing was Margaret's expression. She didn't look happy but worried. And then Jack discovered something that almost went unnoticed. In the corners of the photo, there appeared to be a small metal box, the same one he had seen in the photograph found in Margaret's house. Driven by curiosity, Jack returned to Margaret's house. There, he continued his search for more clues. In a closet hidden behind an old curtain, he found a notebook. It was Margaret's diary, and the pages were filled with notes that seemed extremely important. Jack began to read quickly, while Max beside him seemed to sense the tension in the air. The notes spoke of something very serious. Margaret had discovered a network of corruption within the church. She mentioned that Father Michael was using the parishioners' money for something mysterious, hiding large amounts of cash. Jack continued reading, his heart pounding faster with every line. "He's been stealing from everyone and using people's trust to cover up his crimes," Margaret wrote on one of the pages. Among the pages of the diary, Jack found an envelope with more photos. In them, Father Michael appeared in hidden parts of the church, carrying a small metal box. In one of the photos, he stood beside an ancient statue inside the church with the box. It seemed he was hiding something beneath the statue. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. So that's it, he murmured to Max. She found out everything, and that's why she was in danger. Jack knew he needed to find that metal box in the church. It was probably the key to understanding the entire mystery. Looking at Max, who wagged his tail as if ready for the next step, Jack said, "Let's go, boy, we have a big secret to uncover." He felt the situation was more serious than he had imagined. Now, with all these discoveries, the truth about what was really happening in this small town seemed about to be revealed. Jack held Margaret's diary in his hands, and each word felt heavier than the last. He knew he needed to return to the church, the place where all the secrets were about to be unveiled. Jack and Max hurried through the town streets, feeling the adrenaline rise with each step, determined to find the metal box mentioned in Margaret's notes. He knew this was the key to unraveling the whole truth. Upon reaching the church, Jack looked around to ensure no one was following him. The church was silent, with the doors slightly ajar and the interior dark. He entered quietly, with Max by his side, and began to explore the place. He remembered the photo he had seen. The metal box was hidden beneath one of the ancient stones. Walking slowly, he reached the statue of a saint in a corner of the church. The figure seemed to watch over everyone with a stern, almost severe gaze. Jack knelt and, with trembling hands, began to feel around beneath the statue, searching for anything that might indicate a hiding spot. And then he felt something. Jack pulled out a small piece of cloth covering the base of the statue, hidden in the shadows. There it was, the metal box Margaret had mentioned in her diary. His heart raced. He looked at Max, who wagged his tail as if to say, "We're on the right track." Jack removed the box, its surface cold and heavy in his hands. Carefully, he opened the lid. Inside, he saw bundles of cash wrapped with ribbons, each labeled with donations and tithes from the parishioners. But that wasn't all. Among the money was a small key. Jack picked it up, holding it under the dim light streaming through the church window. "A safe," he murmured, "but what could it be for?" Then he noticed a yellowed piece of paper stuck beneath the money. Carefully, he removed and unfolded the paper. It was a map, with a place marked by a red circle, and beside the circle were the words "church storage." Jack immediately understood. The key opened some secret storage in the church. That's where Margaret must have been thinking of going. With a mix of fear and hope, he knew he had to act fast. With the key in hand, Jack looked at Max and said, "Let's go, boy, we need to find this storage," he declared, and began to follow the map carefully. The church seemed increasingly silent, as if the building itself held its breath. The map led to a small door hidden behind the altar, a door few knew existed. A shiver ran through Jack as he moved. The air there seemed colder, as if something dark was guarded in that place. Jack inserted the key into the lock, took a deep breath, and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into a dark basement. With a trembling flashlight in hand, he descended the steps, and Max followed closely, ears alert to any sound. At the end of the stairs, he found a dark, damp corridor. At the end of this corridor, a light flickered from a room. Jack heard a low sound, like the clinking of chains. "Margaret," he called out in a whisper, but only heard the echo of his own voice. With his heart pounding, he entered the room, illuminated by a dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. And there she was, Margaret, chained to a chair, pale but alive. "Jack," Margaret whispered, her voice weak but filled with relief. Before Jack could respond, he heard heavy footsteps behind him. Turning, he found Father Michael holding a wooden plank, his face contorted with fury. "You shouldn't be here," the priest spat, his voice distorted by anger. "I told you you'd never find Margaret." Jack barely had time to react. The priest lunged, trying to strike him with the wooden plank. Jack dodged, but the blow grazed him, causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Struggling to regain his footing, Jack thought, stunned, how could a priest do this? Father Michael, seeing Jack down, prepared to attack again, but Max didn't wait. With a fierce bark, the dog leaped at the priest, biting his leg with all his strength. The priest cried out in pain, trying to shake free, but Max didn't let go. Desperate, the priest dropped the wooden plank and began to flee, limping and shouting for help. Jack, still with his heart racing, quickly got up and ran after him. He can't get away, he thought, knowing the truth needed to be revealed. Max moved close by as the priest ran out of the church into the street, where all the neighbors were already coming out of their homes, drawn by the noise. The priest finally stopped, and people were shocked to see the priest, a man once respected, involved in a scuffle with Jack and being attacked by a dog. Seizing the moment, Jack spoke, "Stop. Everyone should know the truth." While the priest tried to free himself, Jack quickly explained what he had discovered about the money box, about Margaret, and Father Michael's crimes. The expressions of shock on the neighbors' faces made it clear they could hardly believe what they were hearing. Father Michael, desperate, tried to escape once more, but Max held him in place until some townsmen approached to help restrain him. With the priest finally under control, Jack knew it was time to reveal the evidence. Leading everyone back to the church, with hands still trembling, Jack opened the metal box in front of everyone. When the neighbors saw the stolen money and the map of the storage, there was no doubt left. The truth was finally in the open. Jack then led the group to the storage, where Margaret, still shaken but alive, was freed. The relief on her face was evident, and Max, realizing his task was complete, wagged his tail with joy. With Father Michael restrained and the evidence of his crimes exposed to the entire town, it seemed the mystery had finally been solved. But Jack knew the priest was not someone who would surrender easily. While the townsmen were still discussing what to do, Father Michael, in a desperate act, seized a moment of distraction to free himself from those holding him. With a look full of hatred, he picked up a piece of wood from the ground and, in a swift movement, ran towards Jack. The anger in his eyes was intense. "You don't understand anything. You should never have gotten involved in this," he shouted. Jack was caught off guard, seeing the priest coming at him with the wooden plank raised, ready to strike. For a second, his mind froze, trying to process the surreal image of a priest attacking someone so violently. But before the priest could hit him, Max leaped without hesitation. With a powerful jump, he bit Father Michael's leg, who let out a cry of pain and fell to the ground, trying to shake off the dog. Jack, now recovering from the initial shock, rushed to help Max, trying to fend off the priest who was struggling. They rolled on the ground in a chaotic fight, with shouts and barks echoing through the street. The desperate priest managed to free himself from Max for a moment and began to run, limping, towards the town's main square. But Max did not give up, chasing after the priest, barking loudly. Soon, he caught up with him. In the middle of the square, Max jumped again, this time knocking Father Michael to the ground, preventing him from escaping. The neighbors, now gathered, watched the scene incredulously. They had never seen Father Michael, a man who represented hope and faith, in such a situation. Jack moved, breathing heavily, and began to explain again what had happened, recounting all the details from the secrets Margaret had uncovered to her abduction by the priest. Some of the neighbors helped restrain the priest while Jack, to prove he was telling the truth, led everyone back to the church. There, he retrieved the metal box and, in front of everyone, opened it, showing the stolen money. The townspeople murmured in shock at the confirmation of the crime. Jack then took the key he had found and led everyone to the secret storage in the church, where Margaret, still recovering, was found. When Margaret appeared, bruised but alive, a collective sigh of relief filled the crowd. The relief and astonishment reflected in everyone's eyes. Max, faithful as always, ran towards Margaret, wagging his tail happily, knowing his friend was finally saved. Father Michael, seeing there was no escape, tried to defend himself, but his words fell on deaf ears. The truth was there, clear as day. Jack, with Max's help, had unveiled all the dark secrets the priest had tried to hide for so long. After the confrontation, Father Michael was captured and exposed as responsible for the corruption crimes and Margaret's abduction. She was freed and thanked Jack and Max for saving her and revealing the truth. The priest was arrested by the police, and the town, still in shock, began to rebuild with more transparency and trust. Subscribe to the channel and click on the notification. Help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. This way YouTube will deliver this content to more people who will benefit. I count on your help. Jack decided to stay in the village, helping Margaret and becoming a part of the community. Max was hailed as a local hero, and everyone found a new beginning, united by courage and truth. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Remember to leave your like, share the channel, and comment your opinion on this story.